First of all, there's a scripture, Hebrews 11:6 says, without faith it is impossible to please God. And that's something that we all need to understand and apply in our lives. Because really, over the years, there's been many steps of faith. Now, when I talk about a step of faith, I don't want people to think, you jump off a cliff and say, Lord, save me. I talk about faith, and I want the context to be understood to be responsible faith. See, all the way through Scripture, I see God's sovereignty and I see man's responsibility, and the two go hand in hand. So the steps of faith started, I would say, as small steps of faith. And as the ministry grew, they became bigger steps of faith. And then as you go through those steps of faith, I call them also Red Sea moments. You come to a stage that you can step out in faith, but then God brings along these Red Sea moments where you're at the edge of the Red Sea. You can't go back. The Egyptians are there. You can't go forward. And if God doesn't open up the Red Sea, then it's not going to work. And throughout the book Miraculous that I wrote, I have these Red Sea moments all through the book. And they get bigger over the years, and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that, the more that you step out in faith and God provides, then I find the next time it's a bigger faith step. And then there's a bigger faith step. And then it gets to that stage where you think, can we really do this? This is a massive step. And, the first sort of faith step in a way, I guess, for us was actually ordering books from America, $20,000 worth of books. That doesn't sound like much, but to us back then is a fortune. For me as a school teacher, we didn't have much in the bank, and yet we needed these books to sell to people in Australia. And then contacting people and saying, would you help us pay for these books? And people started to loan us money. In those days, we didn't even write out a note saying you loaned us money. They just trusted us. And, getting $17,000, and then suddenly we're 3,000 short, and we're praying, Lord, where's it going to come from? And a person pulls up in front of our house in a car and says, I heard you speak at church and your vision for what you're doing here for this ministry, and my wife and I want to help you with what you're doing, and hand us a check for $3,000. I mean, that sort of thing has happened over and over again, although they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Even resigning from school teaching and going full-time into this ministry was a big step of faith. And people said that they would help us. We didn't have any guarantees, but we asked people, if we did this, would you help us? That's the responsibility part. And then God provided in lots of ways. There was even a family that owned a vegetable and fruit shop, and they every week would put a box of fruit and vegetables on our landing for us, and things like that. And so there are many, many steps of faith over the years. And one of the things that I have learned is you can't just sit back and say, Lord, provide. It's like the Creation Museum. What are we going to do? Well, we stepped out to zone some property. We didn't even have money to buy the property, but we really believed God had called us to this. And then there was all sorts of problems. Atheists opposed us, and we lost that particular property. So we didn't give up because God had given me that fire in my bones. The media said to us, is that the end now? No, not at all. We just look for another piece. And the piece of property we found was right on the interstate, far better piece of property, far better position. And then we decided, let's build a bigger museum, even though we didn't have any money. And to obtain that property, we had no money. And so the farmer who was selling it, we asked, would you be prepared to sell it to us at $500,000? It's worth millions now. $500,000 at $100,000 a year, interest free. Now, I don't know why anyone would agree to that, but they did. And looking back on it, that's a God thing, right? This is a step of faith. And it's been like that the whole way along. I could talk about many miracles, many Red Sea moments, and how God has provided. It's just absolutely amazing, really.